Welcome to The Explainer. So the Jeffrey Epstein files, they've been everywhere lately, right? But what if the most important parts of the story aren't actually in those files at all? Today, we're going to dig into the source material to explore a historical playbook of covert operations that might just change the way you see this entire case.
Okay, let's dive right in. The release of all these Epstein files, it created a total media frenzy. But according to the analysis we're looking at, to really get what's going on, you have to look past the famous names and into a decades-old covert operations playbook. And that playbook, it puts everything in a whole new light.
So when millions of court files were finally unsealed, everybody got a look inside. But here's the thing, the key to understanding what they all mean isn't just what's in them, it's about what was very specifically left out.
Just look at this number for a second, 427 to 1. I mean, when do you ever see a vote like that in Congress? It's pretty much unheard of. It shows this massive, overwhelming consensus, a clear sign that absolutely no one wanted to be caught voting against this release.
Okay, so this is the crucial point. The law forced open the doors at the Department of Justice and the FBI. But, and this is a huge but, it did not and could not force the release of any files that came from the Central Intelligence Agency. That's a critical distinction, and it shapes this entire story.
And this brings us to a really central argument from our source material. You can't really understand the Epstein case without first understanding the historical playbook for covert ops. So we're going to have to step back in time a bit to see a set of tactics that intelligence agencies have been using for decades.
A perfect example of this is something called Operation Mongoose. On the surface, it was all about regime change in Cuba, but underneath that, it was basically a blueprint for covert action, mixing public goals with some really deep, clandestine, and often illegal methods.
And this just perfectly illustrates a core tactic right out of that playbook, something called the Overworld-Underworld Alliance. I mean, here you have a declassified file, not a rumor, an actual government file, spelling out that the CIA planned to partner up with organized crime, with the mob, to carry out an assassination. All with plausible deniability, of course.
And it wasn't just about violence. The playbook also included sexual compromise. This declassified document right here details a plan from the 1960s to use a fake pornographic film just to discredit a world leader. It just goes to show you that sexual blackmail as a political tool isn't some new conspiracy theory. It's a documented part of the covert toolkit.
So let's follow the money, because this is how the whole thing gets built. These kinds of operations, they don't exactly fund themselves. They need a steady stream of cash that can't be traced back to taxpayers or, congressional budgets.
This creates this kind of self-sustaining cycle, often called the drugs for cash for guns loop. And it's a model that's been used over and over, from funding anti-communist forces in China way back in the 40s all the way to the Iran-Contra affair in the 80s. A truck full of narcotics can fund an army. A truck full of copper just can't.
And this whole funding machine, it needed a special kind of financial system. The rise of offshore banking, from the Vatican Bank's unique status to all these hubs in former British colonies, it created a global shadow financial system. And it was perfect for laundering money and funding operations that could never, ever get public approval.
So you've got the covert plan, and you've got the untraceable money. But these incredibly complex systems, they don't just run themselves. They rely on a very specific type of person, an operator who knows how to work in that gray space between the public and private worlds.
The source material argues that Jeffrey Epstein wasn't some kind of anomaly, but actually a perfect example of this archetype, the professional fixer. These are the people who use their massive networks to make things happen for very powerful clients, all while staying officially unaffiliated and, most importantly, deniable.
And you can see this isn't just a one-off thing. Let's compare Epstein to someone like Bruce Rappaport. Here you have a private Swiss billionaire who was hired by the U.S. National Security Council to secretly broker a pipeline deal with Israel. It's a private citizen doing highly sensitive state business, completely off the books. It's the exact same model.
And that brings us right back to where we started, back to those documents that were just released. Because after you understand this historical playbook, you realize the biggest bombshells aren't in the files we have. They're in the questions raised by the files we don't have. Now this might be the most stunning detail of all. In 1999, we're talking long before he was a household name, Jeffrey Epstein filed a request to see what files the CIA had on him. The question is just so obvious. Why would a private financier want to know what the nation's top spy agency has on him?
And the CIA's answer is incredibly telling. This Glomar response, we can neither confirm nor deny.
That's the standard, boilerplate reply they use whenever an inquiry gets close to classified personnel files or serious intelligence matters. It's a non-answer that, honestly, speaks volumes.
And that just leaves us with one last, really provocative question. We saw what one act of Congress could force out of the Justice Department. So you have to wonder, what's still hidden in the archives of the intelligence community, and what would it finally take to bring it all into the light?